We are going to talk about the exciting topic of facility management. All right. I know that this is a moving topic. I did say some of the things in here would be less than super ultra exciting. But management is an important aspect of any job that you're going to be a part of. Management is something in here everybody probably has already experienced at least once if you have had any kind of job. So hopefully we'll be able to have a little bit of a discussion or some other opinions and things like that rather than me just talking to you about some of the core information or foundational information that we need to make sure that we all are on the same page about. Okay, 22 slides, not too bad. Okay. One of the great things that has happened with the changes in healthcare and the turmoil that we are all in our society over healthcare and the direction that it's going to go is it's created, or hopefully and theoretically down the road is going to create a lot of new opportunities for athletic training people, people who want to be in exercise science, physical therapy, occupational therapy. I know particularly from an athletic training perspective, we have always been kind of behind the scenes in the shadows. You know, you get there an hour before everybody else does, you get everybody ready, you stand back behind you, everybody else on the sidelines. You're only kind of seeing if there's a problem. Everybody goes home, we're still in there cleaning up and taking care of everybody for another hour or so after the fact. And that's the way we like it, but unfortunately for us and for athletic training people, that's not been a very good place for us because now in the age of outcomes and proving what you do and how you do it and how good you are at your job, we've not done a very good job of that because we're always behind the scenes. Many of you that have had athletic training people in high school, no, they're always there. You can call them, all those other kind of things. But in terms of being out in the forefront now and being compared with other health care practitioners like physical therapists and occupational therapists and the like, we're a little bit behind the eight ball. So we're working really hard to do that. But with healthcare now and the changes in the ability to bill for services and with the new changes that are coming down the road with Obamacare and the push towards health, that should open up new opportunities not only for athletic training but also for exercise science people. How many people in here are going to work with patients that have less than perfect body weight? Raise your hand. Okay, everyone in here. Okay, how many obese patients, or what is the percentage, or what is the number in millions of people that are overweight or obese in this country alone? Just throw something out. How many? 31,000 people overweight? Million. 31 million? How many people in this country alone? How many people exist in this country alone? It's geography, or political, however you want to say it. How many people? How many people in this country that you live in? Yeah, sure. Give me a guess. He's going to Google it. Is it Christian, right? Yeah. Christian's going to Google it.
Okay,
how many?
I'll say a guess.
Please.
I think about 300 million, and I heard once that overweight plus obese could be as much as 60%
okay.
of our population.
Those are some pretty good guesses. I'm thinking you're in the ballpark between 250 and 300 million. 319, 313.9 million.
As of 2012.
As of 2012, 313. Is that we said 313 million? 313 million, and let's say half of all people in this country are obese or overweight. That's 160 some million people. So I am not a math person. So the chances that all of you will be working with those type of people are pretty good, whether you want to or not. May be a component of what you do, may not be a component of what you do. See, and you never have to wonder how I can talk for an hour and a half about 22 slides, right? Because we haven't even talked about this yet. But the point of that being, the new opportunities for people in health and wellness are going to be in health and wellness. Okay? The hope for exercise science and people are going to be that you can get reimbursed for doing personal training. You can get reimbursed through Medicare and through government insurance and through, if you want to call it Obamacare or Affordable Care Act, and hopefully even third-party insurers like Medical Mutual and Aetna and all those other places, the hope would be that you can get reimbursement for your services. So instead of people having to pay out of their pocket to go to personal training or to go to weight control classes or Weight Watchers, wherever, we can incorporate diet and exercise together from people that know what they're doing, not only from a knowledge perspective, but also who have worked with real people in real settings in labs and classes. So we hope down the road that this is coming. There have already been some very good opportunities in corporate health. We have a number of graduates already in athletic training and exercise science that are both working for corporations that do wellness screenings, that do education and run fitness and wellness programs with a little bit of rehabilitation in workplace settings. So that is certainly one of the new and upcoming places, hopefully, where we will find a niche for jobs in a number of different places, because we're going to be battling this for a really long time. Okay? Now, having said that, some of the other opportunities that we open up will also be for second-tier practitioners, which means not necessarily entry-level people anymore, but hopefully we can work up the corporate ladder and be managers and be supervisors and be directors over other people. And I mentioned before, traditionally in athletic training, that was slow to happen, but now we are seeing athletic training people who are supervising other patients and other areas. And the same should be true for exercise science people as well, to be managers of people. Okay? So in terms of definition by Webster, if we want to say what exactly is management, okay, there's a couple key things in this definition. The first thing is that it's a process. So when we talk about management, it's not like we're going to be managers today or I am going to do management today. It is an ongoing, ever-changing process, multifaceted. Okay, and we're going to talk about what kind of types of people are going to be management in a minute. But I'm sure everybody in here can think of an instance where they've been managed by someone else, positive and negative. Or you may also be able to look to a point where you've already managed somebody positive and negatively. So it's a process by managers or people. They're going to create things. They're going to direct other people to do things. They're going to maintain and operate purposive or purposeful organizations through a systematic, coordinated, and cooperated effort. That's a mouthful. That's a mouthful. And that is a lot of responsibility. And we can all agree probably that there are people who are managers who shouldn't be managers. There are also people that we would like to see be managers, but they can't, either because of their educational level or their experience. A lot of times people get held up by not having a degree. There are people that have worked in an industry for 20 years, but because they don't have that bachelor's degree or that associate's degree or that minimum criteria, they can't be managers and be promoted. Okay? So those are all things that are out there. But it is a very long, involved process. The talk that we are going to do today is by no means a dissertation on management. We're going to barely scratch the surface. So if you are going to be a manager, you need to be in business, minor in business. If you're going to be an owner and you want to manage, there's all kinds of things you can do, whether it's academic coursework as part of your degree or whether it is courses and self-help books and all kinds of seminars and things outside of class. But I encourage you at least to get some foundational knowledge so that you can help relate to people. So I mentioned before that it is dynamic. It would be great if we could give everybody who is going to be a manager a magic pill, just like it would be great if we could give everybody who wanted to lose weight a magic pill. So anybody that's going to come up with either one of those, you could probably win some kind of prize with a lot of money and make a lot of money. But there aren't any magic pills for either one of those. Okay? So it is a process. It occurs over time. And the other thing is that what you know today about management isn't necessarily going to be good for 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, 3 years down the road. Because there are new people coming up with new books and new self-help talks and new motivational speeches like crazy all over the place. And the key for you to take, I guess, from this talk about management is to learn some of the basics, but be able to be open to finding information if you don't know it. If you didn't learn it as part of your classwork, Go out and seek information if you want to be in management that's going to help you be that manager and be the rock star. And you'll hear some of the other speakers in here talking about continuing education resources. I know when Josh Sticky comes in, he owns his own personal training place called Sculpt Fitness. I think he'll be in a couple weeks. And you'll hear him talk about a laundry list of resources that he has gone to, not only in terms of developing programs for his people, but in managing people and running a business. And he'll give you the whole funny thing about, you know, how he's learned by the seat of his pants, and he happens to be the exception to the rule. Okay? So, one thing that we do know for sure that is absolute is that change is evident. Whatever we have today and the environment that we are in today is not going to be the same as it is tomorrow or the next day or the next day. So if you plan your business for today, you better plan for some kind of growth and vision, because 6 months from now it's going to be different, as a year from now, as a year and a half from now, for a number of different factors. Politics, economy, global changes in the environment, okay? Who in this country ever would have thought that we would be now? Did you hear what President Obama is going to do today? Are you all right, Laura? Did you hear what we're going to do today? 2 big pieces of things that are going to happen in the world today that are going to impact us. Because whatever happens in the rest of the world impacts us here.
Something to do with ISIS?
It has to do with ISIS. Without getting into a big, huge political landscape. But we're going to be supporting people over in the Middle East to try and figure out how to control some people in governments that have unrest. And that's going to directly impact how money is going to get spent in this country, because now we're committing money and resources elsewhere. So that impacts the amount of money that we have to fund Medicare and Medicaid and social programs in our country. That's the first big piece. So in the process of change being evident, that's one thing that's going to happen. What's the other thing that's going to happen? Help me with your name. Josh. Push your button, please, for me.
Africa and the Ebola.
Africa and the Ebola. What about it?
We're going to take a humanitarian approach to help facilitate some kind of medical issue.
So what are we going to
support? Doctors.
Doctors and
money.
And money. Okay, because nobody ever thought that Ebola was going to affect us here, but now that 3 Americans, I think a minimum, maybe 4 now, have contracted the Ebola virus, now the big news this morning is that the Atlantic Ocean is not going to stop Ebola from getting here eventually. And so now we're going to commit 3,000 workers, I think is what I heard, and a bunch of money to go in and try, and because apparently it's doubled in the last 6 weeks or something like that, the amount of people who have contracted it. And I want to say 24,000 people are dead, right? Something about that. Which, what's that? It is, but in terms of, if you talk about in terms of big numbers, 24,000 is, in terms of 313 million, 24,000, not a lot of people, but those are only people that have died. That doesn't account for how many others are infected. So, I mean, if you know anything about history, the Black Plague, polio, all those things that once they go, once it gets here, big news. Okay, so change is evident, and change elsewhere is going to affect what we do and how we protect ourselves. Because as healthcare people, working with people, you got to be thinking about protecting yourself and your patients. So change is evident. Managing is a control thing. A lot of people will talk about managers or management people being controllers. A couple of the terms that aren't in the PowerPoint that I'm sure that we'll throw out over the course of the next hour will be micromanagers, people that really want to control you and manage you and know every little speck of every little thing you're doing. And there'll be other people who are laissez-faire, very laid-back, loose managers who give you something and then you never hear from them again for 2 or 3 years, and they just expect you to go and do it, so they don't really manage closely at all. Okay? So managing has the ability to control. It can control the nature, the degree, and the extent of how that change moves forward. Sometimes we don't have any control over how quickly things change. Sometimes within your healthcare facility, you might be able to make some of those changes possible. The good thing about managing is that hopefully you're preventing you're presenting your facility and your people with opportunities. Management should be a good thing, and to allow people to be creative, to allow other people to express interests and express ways that things can be done either more efficiently, more effectively, more productive. It shouldn't be stifling, is what management shouldn't be. It should be meant to be controlling in a way that there are processes and procedures, and somebody has to be in charge of controlling to make sure those things get done. But it's not meant to be stifling. But I'm sure that that happens also. It's meant to be a good process and good so that it allows people to move forward and be productive and be efficient. Now, everybody in here should, if you want to be some kind of manager, should have some kind of philosophy. How are you going to manage your people? What are some examples of management philosophies that you might know about already? Does anybody have any experiences or anything that leads to management and how you manage people? You got to have a philosophy. If you're going to be in charge of people, you got to know how is it that you're going to relate to them. DJ.
You need to learn how to trust your employees or those that are working for you.
Okay. So part of your philosophy might be that you have to trust people, because if you trust them, if you're hiring people to work below you, you are expecting that they have a certain level of skill and ability, and you want to let them do that on their own without being involved every little step of the way. Christian.
I'm the manager at the info desk of the student union, and I just kind of manage. I treat them like how I would want my manager to treat me, and respect like that they don't want to do all the crappy jobs, like, and delegate it to spread it out so everything's kind of fair. Like I said, I just kind of, as long as everything's like getting done, then I don't have to like yell or anything. So. Okay. So some good things in there. Treat other people how you want to be treated, part of your philosophy. Be respectful of other people, knowing that I wouldn't clean toilets. I wouldn't ask somebody to clean toilets if I wouldn't do that myself. Respectful. That was probably not a good example, but Tim.
I've worked for two different, like, completely polar opposite managers. One of them was a strict, no-nonsense, like, you mess up, you're out of here kind of manager, and the other one's kind of a let's learn as you go. If you mess up, we'll give you second chances as long as you learn from it. Okay. So, and those are two philosophies of managing. Strict, or by the book, whatever I say or whatever's written goes. And I won't say lazy, but we'll call this person loose. Okay. Who else, Gabby?
I was going to say, obviously they have to be honest, but at the same time...
Well, they don't have to be.
Or not honest, but like an ideal manager would be honest, or like a role model for others, but also kind of going what Christian said, like being, not like being a friend, but knowing like a boundary of being able to be like superior, but at the same time like not overly superior. And
okay,
like,
we'll say boundaries.
Yeah.
Good boundaries. What else? Your philosophy to managing, or if you were going to be in charge of people, what would be your philosophy or your approach? We talk about you having a philosophy for the type of facility that you want to work in. That sets the tone for how things run on a daily basis is maybe a better way to say that. And I know there's some other people out here. John?
You need to be able to delegate the work. I already did.
Okay.
You need to be able to delegate the work between people.
Okay, delegator. What else? Come on, some other people back there. I know all of you have had some kind of manager, had worked with some kind of manager. Stephen?
You have to be a good communicator and listen as well as speak. And
that's the key thing that he said there. Because everybody focuses, or the big focus is typically on communication. There was an article, I was in Walgreens the other day, and as I'm leaving, it was one of those like local newspapers or whatever, and the title of the article was the 3 things that all employers want from their workers. And it was the 3 C's, and I can't remember off the top of my head what it is, but one of them was commitment, communication, and I forget what the other one was, but could be compassion. I can't remember off the top of my head. Did you? But we all talk about communicating, and one of the big core values here at Akron, and for sure in athletic training, is the ability to communicate with people written and oral. But that's only half the battle. You can talk all you want to, because have you ever worked with somebody who you're trying to communicate a point and they start talking while you're talking? Well, that doesn't do any good if you're not listening what they're saying, and you're not only hearing what they're saying, but listening to what they're saying and taking it in. So being a good communicator, but also being a good listener. And you can be one or the other or both. Just because you're a good communicator doesn't mean you're a good listener. What else? What else about a philosophy of how you're going to manage your people? Tim?
I think it's important to know your personnel. Specifically, just from example, I'm a supervisor lifeguard, and I know that I can delegate certain responsibilities to other people because they're better suited for it than someone else might be.
Mm-hmm. And that also allows you to be able to kind of tailor your business to people's strengths and give certain things to people that you know would do something. Now, the downfall of that is if the same two people get all of the opportunities because they're the only people that are skilled, and you have one person who you've hired and who's there but ends up not doing any work because they're crappy, which is what happens all the time. The people who can do the work typically end up getting all the work to do because people trust them and they know that the work is going to get done. The people that can't do the work typically don't get any work because they know if I give it to this person, it's never going to get done. Which means, you know, that person should not be employed there. Okay, and that was a key one that we talked about as relating to your personnel, the people that you have hired and employed. One of the things, we're going to do a throwback here to, I think it's psychology. Is it psychology or sociology? Psychology. Okay. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Is everybody remember that, recall that, heard that before? Okay. So one of the first things that we have to do in a throwback or review is to be aware that all of the people that we work with are part of this continuum. And I like to think of it in terms of not only the people that you work with, but also the patients that you're going to, and the clients that you're going to work with. All are part of this continuum. Okay? And in your management philosophy of working with people, you have to be able to understand where people are on the spectrum. Because it's really hard for people to come to work and do a good job if they're worried about their food and their shelter and their warmth and their basic needs. So, you know, when you hired them and got them as an employee, things might have been all well and good, but things might have happened in their life, and now all of a sudden maybe they got divorced and they only have half their income, and now they can't pay their electric bill. And so their house is cold, or they don't have electricity and their alarm won't go off because they don't have electricity and they keep showing up late for work. So it's important that we remember in the back of our minds all the time that we're dealing with people. And with people always comes this. If I had it, I'd show it. But people always come with baggage, right? Everybody in here, we all have baggage every single day. Sometimes we check our baggage at the counter like we're supposed to when we come into school or to work or to our jobs. Sometimes we don't. We take our baggage with us wherever we go, at work. Maybe we're functioning horribly at work, it's because we got something else on our mind, but baggage is there. So what I want you to make sure that you do is to, when you're dealing with people, whether it's as employees below you or around you, or your patients or clients, you have to treat them as people. Now, that doesn't mean you necessarily have to sit down and have a half-hour counseling session with them every day, but you have to be empathetic to where they might be on this continuum. Does it mean that you have to help them with their electric bill? No. But it does mean that you have to maybe understand and have a conversation with them and be able to gear them to some resources or to be able to help them be able to manage this so that they can continue coming to work. One of the other big things too is that I want you to keep in mind is with your clients and your patients. Remember, when they come to you, just because they come to you with a shoulder problem doesn't mean the only thing you look at and you focus on when they come in there is their shoulder. Okay? Yes, you're there to treat their shoulder and you're only billing for their shoulder, but part of getting them better with their shoulder is their whole person and understanding their whole being. And if you can, because maybe there are some limitations within their life why their shoulder isn't getting better. You know, it's hard to focus and be compliant in your rehabilitation if when you go home, your safety because there's domestic abuse or something like that. But they won't tell you that, but that may be an impediment to working with your patients and clients. So remember, nobody ever gets to self-actualization. We are always achieving. We always are trying to get better and get to that pinnacle of achieving success and accomplishment. Sometimes maybe we get there for a little bit and then we fade back because there's some other challenge in front of us. So this is just meant for you to remember that when we deal with people, we get all of these things. We get all the baggage. We get all of the needs that have been met and that have been met. And a lot of times this is an explanation for their behavior, good or bad. And we ultimately have to get to the bottom of what's causing the behavior in order to make them better. So when we talk about confronting employees, again, you're filing that in the back of your mind. All right, so 3 specific styles of management: autocratic, laissez-faire from 8th grade history, and democratic. Okay. Theoretically, the textbooks say that no one style works better than others, and that it depends on the kind of person that you are and the kind of setting that you're in. Now, who here in this room thinks that you are already classified into one of these 3 categories? So you're always autocratic, or your style is always autocratic or always democratic based on the kind of person that you are. It's in your genetic makeup. It's kind of how you are, who you are. And that's a discussion for another day as to whether we can change, whether the leopard that we are today is the leopard that we always are, or whether we can change our spots and become a cougar. So, who here believes that we are who we are? If we were to manage today, I would be a autocratic manager, we'll just say, for shits and giggles. And that I would never be democratic or never be laissez-faire, laid back. No one says that. So everyone in this room believes that of these 3 styles, you can change. Today I might be this one, another day I might be this one, another day I might be this one. And does it depend on the day, or does it depend on the situation, or does it depend on the people? D, all of the above?
Yeah.
That's a non-answer. Okay. But I agree with you, because I don't know. I think that people have tendencies to always be a particular style. They probably show that or flash that more so than anything else. But I think if you look at people that have managed and you have managed, there may be instances where any or all of these are appropriate. And you may have a choice between them. Now, this is kind of a little cheat sheet. Autocratic, this person is your dictator, if you will, makes decisions with little or no input, so they don't even ask for your input. This is the way it's going to be because I said so, and I'm not even going to give you an opportunity. I'm not even going to pacify you and give you the, not the distraction, but the illusion that I'm asking you what you want to do. I'm not even going to ask. I don't care. Right? And there may be some instances when that's good. Okay? Laissez-faire. These are kind of the middle of the road people. Some people may say these are the non-decision makers, as one of the points down in here is that sometimes the laissez-faire often doesn't get any decisions made because you get input from other people, you recognize that people around you have value and they have an expertise and they might be able to provide you with some good information, but sometimes they don't know what to do with all that information because they have so much information that it all seems good, and now I don't know what to do with all that information because I'm not really the decision-making kind of person. I can't really stick my neck out there and say, okay, you decided that this was a good idea, we're going to use her idea and go. So again, it's not necessarily horrible here, but of the 3 methods, that's probably the least desirable just because things kind of get left to die and nothing moves forward. Okay? Now, the democratic person, they encourage your input and decisions. and hopefully they use those collaborative efforts to tease out one scenario or one answer that's going to work for the problem and move forward. What's the problem with the democratic method?
What if everyone doesn't agree?
You have to push your button.
I mean, what if everyone doesn't agree?
Okay. Well, we have to define what is going to mean agree, like majority or quorum are some of the things. So that's one problem.
It takes too long in some cases.
We have to have a meeting to have a meeting to have a meeting to get the outcome of the meeting. So that is one of the things that being democratic takes a really long time. If we were to take 5 people in a group, like we were going to do a group project in here, because I know you all love group projects, it's your favorite. If you were going to take a group of 5 people in here and come up with an outcome or an answer or a solution, would that be easier than if we were to take the whole room of you and say we have to do a group project? 5 easier or the whole room? 5. Because not only can you punch the person across from you if you don't like them and boot them out of your group, you get personal face-to-face communication. You can work with them to maybe change their mind. It's a lot easier to change 3 people's minds than it is to change 45 people's minds. So think about that for a minute, if you will. What kind of country do we live in? Because we continue our integration of politics and healthcare. What kind of country do we live in? It's
technically a republic. There's a republic.
The Republic of the United States of America?
Well, we appoint people to make decisions.
We do. Okay. In layman, not in their so technical terms, would people consider this a democracy because you have a voice? Is our democracy really super big? Right. So do we feel like we have a voice a lot of times? Yes or no? This is your opinion section. Or we might feel like we have an opinion because we get to vote, but do we feel like our opinion matters or makes a difference in that big, huge 313 million people? Sometimes that's hard for us to envision if one vote is actually going to make or break or make the difference. Okay, so again, democracy, it may or may not work for the type of facility that you're in. If you're going to have a facility that has 20 people and you're going to sit down to a staff meeting every week and say that every decision gets made via us voting and agreeing on it, it's probably not going to be very productive. So there's a time and a place to be autocratic. There's a time and a place to be laissez-faire, perhaps, and there is probably a time and a place to be democratic, But remember, all 3 of these don't work all the time, without talking about politics anymore. All right, functions of a manager. According to Management Strategies and Athletic Training, they talk about 4 different aspects of being a manager. They talk about planning, which we've talked about in here already, and about how you shouldn't do anything before you have a plan. Okay? Being able to organize your facility and your people. Direct those people once you've organized, and direct them or delegate or tell people where to go and what to do. And control for situations and environments and things that are around you. Now, we know that we try to control for everything, but a lot of times we can't control for everything under the sun. When we do bloodborne pathogens planning and protocols, and when we do emergency action plans, we try to plan for everything, but there are days when all we are going to do are put out fires because we can't control for everything that happens on the planet. Okay? So things that we're going to do, and we'll talk just briefly a little bit of these. When we plan, it means what are we going to do and how are we going to do it? And we've already talked a little bit about this before. You have to prepare. You have to think not only about when you plan about what am I going to do today, but what is the outcome of that planning going to be. And if you haven't heard that term before, outcome, you better learn it. Because everything we do now is about outcomes. If I treat this patient, how many visits is it going to take me to get them better? And how am I going to measure that they got better? OT, PT, athletic training, chiropractic, physician, physician assistant. Because all of you are going to be responsible for billing insurance companies and getting money for the services that you provide. And if you can't show them that you got their shoulder better or that you made progress in getting their shoulder better, are you going to get paid? Absolutely not. Or if you get paid, you might get paid, but you're going to have to do 2 or 3 times the paperwork again and again and again to show them that you did what you were supposed to do. And if you don't get paid, where are you going to be? Where are you going to be? In the cheese line. If you don't get paid. And now it's getting more challenging and more challenging to do that because reimbursements are shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And they want everybody to be good at what they do, and they want you to have all this education. They want you to be an expert in outcomes and getting people better, but they want to give you less money even though you're an expert. And I don't know if we know how to fix that. We haven't figured out how we're going to fix that yet. Because we want people to be educated. We want all physical therapists now to be doctorates. In athletic training, we were moving to having all people having master's degrees. We already know that physicians go through, 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of med school, and then anywhere from 2 to 8 years probably of residency. So they spend a lot of time and money getting there. They're supposed to be experts. They want to get paid like experts. But the insurance companies don't, and I'm not anti-insurance company, but they don't want to pay because more people are fat and hurt and need surgery than they can pay everybody for. Okay? So you have to know how to be good at determining outcomes. Okay? So we try to prepare for the worst possible scenario. We cannot. We cannot. Horrible situation that just happened yesterday in the news in Akron. Bus driver preparing for an emergency, practicing her evacuation plan for the school bus, and something went wrong, and she rescued a little girl, the last little girl. Everybody was off the bus but one. She pushed the little girl out of the way, and she got hit and killed by the bus. So even though we try to plan and do all the right things that we're supposed to do in terms of having an emergency action plan, knowing what we're supposed to do, and planning for it, something can still go wrong. Okay? So we can't plan for everything, but we got to try. So in terms of outcomes. So these are questions that you want to ask. And these are not an all-inclusive list, but how long do we have before we have to take action? Which means, do we have to hire somebody today because we don't have enough personal trainers to be able to meet all of our client needs? Do we have to hire somebody today, or can it wait till we can do a proper screening process and hire the right person? Okay? If you want to remodel, should we remodel or should we move to a new facility? Have we ever tried it before? If we have, then we have something to look to. If not, we got to start from scratch. What makes it so urgent that we have to do it today? Have we defined what our problem is? Maybe your problem is not getting enough reimbursement from Aetna. You've treated 25 ACL patients, and you realize that of all the treatments, you're only getting reimbursed, $100 out of $2,000. Okay, so how are we going to fix that? Where are we going to go to be able to do that? Where are we going to go to get more information? So that's half the battle, is knowing that the problem exists and then being able to figure out how you're going to solve it. What's your goal, or what do you want to happen in the end of your plan? And who is going to be affected by this? Everybody in the facility, only your patients, only your physicians. So you got to answer some of these questions before you just decide to say, oh, let's hire a new physical therapist. It's going to cost us another $100,000 a year. It's got to be worth it for you to go through all that, and you got to answer some questions to see how long is it going to take us to recoup all that money if we had an additional staff member. Because it costs a lot of money to hire people, because you have to not only pay their salary, but they get benefits, which are worth probably anywhere between $20,000 and $20,000 or more. If some people get cars, some people get cell phones, some people get gas allowances. When Dee Barton comes in, she works for AstraZeneca, pharmaceutical sales. And she comes in here and talks about, the fact that people get, $50,000 a year, and they get a car, and they get a cell phone, and they get a gas allowance, and they get X amount of dollars. But bottom line is, you hit your numbers, or you don't have a job. So there are trade-offs, but hiring somebody in those circumstances is a big process because of what it costs to be able to do that. So, bless you. The ability to organize, the ability to divide up work and allocate it to the appropriate person. And we talked, Tim mentioned earlier about organizing or delegating and being able to give the right person the right work or the right jobs. And I already mentioned what happens if you give all the same two people all of the work. But a skill. Direct. Are you going to be a director? The successful director supposedly takes more of an autocratic approach, assigning responsibilities and deadlines. Most people need deadlines. I'm a perfect example. If you don't give me a deadline, that line goes forever and ever and ever and ever. But if you give somebody a deadline, then you have certain, you can say with certainty whether they met that deadline or not, and then you have the ability to say, we're going to fire you because you have missed this deadline, and this deadline, or you've met your deadlines and we're going to promote you based on that evaluation. Okay? And how many in here want to know what's expected of them? Everybody, I would say. Is it easier to do your work if you know what's expected of you? If it's really, really gray, then what do? You procrastinate because you don't know where to start. You bug your classmates because you're trying to figure out if they understand.
I said you guess.
You guess, which may or may not work out for you. You email me 100 times over the weekend. What else do you do? It's not in the same thing. If you have a job and you're trying to guess what you're supposed to be doing in your job, you're worried about pleasing your boss and whether or not you're still going to have a job. So expectations and deadlines are good things. We mentioned a little bit about controlling. We can't control for everything. And the manager typically is the person that puts out the fires. They're supposed to be the person that can handle those circumstances or unflappable in putting out those fires. Okay. Here are some things that are supposed to be key elements of a successful manager. Okay. When we talk about terms of personality, what kind of personality is good for a manager to have? What kind of personality?
Outgoing.
Okay, outgoing. Tim?
Encouraging.
Encouraging. What else?
They need to have a positive attitude towards things.
Positive attitude. And what was the first thing you said? What did you say?
Outgoing.
Outgoing. That's hard to measure. If we're talking about measuring. How do I measure if you're outgoing or not? I don't know. Okay, who else? I don't mean to throw you under the bus, but what I'm saying is, hold on one second. When you talk about in terms of evaluating, if I'm going to evaluate whether somebody's a good manager or not, they have to be measurable. And we have to be able to view them or see them or measure them. Go ahead.
I'd say one of the most important things is decisiveness. Going back to the laissez-faire thing, if they just can't make a decision, nothing's ever going to get done, and they're not going to look good as a manager.
That's not spelled right. But decisiveness, the ability to make a decision, absolutely. What else about your personality? Because I can have this. DJ.
You got to be able to get along with the people you're working with.
Okay, so what kind of personality trait allows for that? Or what is it about someone's personality that allows them to get along with other people?
Well, you could say outgoing.
That's a hard one.
Friendly.
What's that?
Friendly.
Friendly? I don't want to be your friend. I'm your manager. Go ahead. Tim.
I've always found a good element is a manager that leads instead of bosses. I don't know what you would call that. Kind of like they will do work with you instead of just always just telling you to do something and just taking a seat and watching. You know?
Okay. I know what you're saying. I'm not sure how we measure. I'm not sure how we measure that one either.
Leading by example is what he's referring to, I believe.
Is he putting words in your mouth?
That's good enough.
Okay. What else? Gabby?
I would say they have to be consistent. Like, I guess that kind of goes with decision making, but more consistency. Like, if they say something, it should be consistent always.
That means whatever. That means whatever goes for you goes for her, goes for her, goes for her, goes for her, goes for him, goes for him. Is that easy to do? No. Should be, but it's not. Christian?
I think you should be consistent, but I also think you should be adaptable and be able to take on any change or last-minute things that you wouldn't pre-plan throughout your day, and know how to not panic when those changes happen.
Okay. The ability to be flexible and move if something different happens. All right. Can people be good managers if their personality is very quiet and reserved and they sit at their desk rather than being out and about with people? Can there be good managers that way?
Yeah.
Has anyone had one that's like that? Yes? You have to push a button for me.
I've had a couple different managers over different jobs. I've had some that are very quiet and but they usually have like assistant managers who do like the speaking part. So like the manager, they were they were very organized. Everything got done. Every task was like very clear, and it's not that they weren't approachable, but you almost didn't want to approach them to ask questions. That's why you would ask like the assistant manager, which I guess follows like a chain of command.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean they didn't manage it well, because if you're looking at it from the standpoint of management, the job that they need to get done is getting done every day on time and everything like that.
But what if they don't have those assistant managers? And that's one of the things that happens in management though too, is that a lot of times the person who gets promoted is not the person who's the best skilled at managing people. How else do people get promoted? I can think of two things off the top of my head, ways that people get promoted, not necessarily because they're the most dynamic person who belongs to be the manager. John?
A common one in different professions is just being tenured.
Okay, so they were there a really long time. They paid their dues because they were there the longest and there was nobody else, so they moved up. Yep. Got to push a button.
They knew somebody in the company.
They knew somebody who helped pull them up. What's the other one?
I mean, I don't really think this goes along with it, but I had a manager get promoted because other managers did the work that he was supposed to do, and so the district manager thought it was him and promoted him.
That's yucky
No.
for those people. I was thinking the fact that I'm the low-level person and I'm the worker bee and I've been there for 10 years, but I don't have the credentials. Like sometimes people get promoted because they have that degree or they have that specific training. And maybe this person has been doing the job, but they didn't need the degree or the certification or whatever when they first got employed, but now things have changed. Now this person comes in who's younger and has those credentials, and now they get to be the manager just because they have the letters after their last name. Okay, so that doesn't necessarily mean. Do managers have to be good at understanding human behavior, or should they be good at understanding human behavior? Do you guys take a human relations class? No? How do you get to understand human behavior? How do you know? What subtle clues can you use to pick up? What signs are there about human behavior? Should you have those skills? Should you have those skills if you're working with the public? Where are you going to go to get those skills?
Firsthand.
What do you mean firsthand? Firsthand?
I mean, it's easier to learn it if you've experienced it for yourself and you see how people react to different situations.
Okay, so one of the first ways is work with people. Okay, you can't be a good physical therapist if you're sitting at your desk all the time and you're not working with people and hearing with people and talking with people. Okay, where else are you going to go? You going to call someone? What are you going to do? How are you going to get to understand human behavior? First of all, I don't like the term understand because I don't know how we measure. Everything is all about outcomes and assessment now, so that's everything that I talk about is related to that because that's all I can see whenever I close my eyes. It's assessment and outcomes. Yes, ma'am.
You can do research.
You could do some research. It wouldn't hurt to read an article or two or a book or two, get some experience. But the best way to understand human behavior is to work with people. Go to the soup kitchen. Go to charities. Go work at the marathon. Just like Laura Cessna talked about when she was here, in terms of resume stuff is one way, but just working with all different types of people in different cultures and different environments is a great way to understand cultures and people. Because what if you go to work with someone who is from India, and someone who is from China, and someone who is from Israel, and someone who is from the Middle East? They're very different, very much different in how they relate and how they work. And so the best way to do that is to get exposure to all different types of people so you can understand behaviors. Okay, communication. What kind of communication do successful managers have? And don't say good communication, because that's not an answer. Christian?
I think you kind of have to just be specific on who you're managing. I try to communicate in a way that everyone's going to comprehend the concept of what I'm saying. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, don't talk above people.
Okay.
Like I'm way up here and you're way down there.
I've always found that being detailed really helps, can get your points across very easily and lets people know exactly what you want done and how it needs to be done.
So you're the micromanager then?
Kind of sometimes.
Okay.
Like I said, it depends on the person.
Gotcha. Okay. Being able to be explicit in your communication. What else? Communicating. DJ.
Not to rag on you, Tim, but I've actually had bad success with micromanaging in a couple different instances too. Some people they don't want all the details. They just want you to tell them to do something, and then they'll come back to you when they're done with that task. But if you give them too many things, they're like, oh, what do I do? I don't know what to do. So it could be, you could do it both ways. It depends on the person you're managing, really.
Well,
not to go ahead.
And that's true. And some people may take micromanaging from individuals because of their personality, because they have a dynamic personality, and it might not feel like micromanaging. And he's right. There may be other people that, ask Rochelle about working in the rec center 10 years ago and about someone standing at your door every moment. Do you have this? Do you have this? Did you get this done? Did you get that done? For some people that's annoying and frustrating. There's other people that would welcome that because they can do that task and send it right away. And they go into the next one and they do it right away. So even though he was picking on you.
I just work with a bunch of idiots.
Amen. I don't want to wear you no work. Okay, but they have to have the ability to communicate. This is a tough one. The ability to influence people. Isn't that a title of a book? Win Friends and Influence Enemies? From the 1970s, How to Win Friends and Influence Enemies and, be wealthy. The ability to lead people. And this is a questionable one for me. Power. Because there are lots of people that take that power thing a little much and have the ability to do this with them instead of maybe this. Okay. We can all agree, I think they have to have decision-making skills. Creativity and innovation, I'm wondering if we wouldn't put that one further down the list. I don't know how you feel about that, but I think a lot of times, particularly in healthcare and programming, creativity and innovation is what's going to set you apart from the next facility that you're competing with. So I think that people, if they don't have it, they should foster it in their employees. Commitment to get tasks completed is another obvious one. If you give people deadlines but never expect the work product, then completing tasks, then work never gets done. Conflict management, I think this one is underrated because I think a lot of times there are lots of conflicts going on within a work environment, and a lot of it festers into the point where it blows up rather than managing it. How many people like to be confronted in here when they got a problem or when they're not doing something correct? How many people want someone to come up to them and say, you know what, you blew it with that patient?
Oh, that's a little harsh.
Okay. So how many people want someone to come up to them and tell them that they were not as effective as they should be? Should that be a personal thing? Personal meaning face-to-face. Should they send you a text message? They shouldn't, but I bet we do. Just like breaking up with people now. We break up with people, or we show up late for work, right, via text message. Probably not a good thing either. So I think that that's a good thing. I think we should be open to conflict management, and I think we should be open to being approached, particularly, but the problem with that is that a lot of times we only approach people in conflict management when something's bad. We don't necessarily, I mean, conflict means that there's a problem, but we should also, if we're going to do things when people are bad and there is conflict, we should also do it on the other end of the spectrum too. But I don't think that we do enough of that. I think that we don't do enough of confronting people face to face in a positive manner that says, hey, you could have done something a little bit different with that patient. I noticed that she was not compliant. Maybe next time you should try this. Okay? But that's still hard to take because someone is criticizing you. So we have to be careful with that, and I think that's probably an area where everybody can get better. Stress management, should we be good stress management people, or the ability to disperse stress? Yeah, because stress turns into bad for the people that work below you. Stress turns into bad physiological things in your body as well as psychological things. And I don't like fair, personally. I think that it's hard to be fair, personally, because I think that not everything is equal and fair. I think there's equitable, which is different, which doesn't mean 50% for her and 50% for her. It means equitable to the amount of work that she did. Maybe the only amount of work that she did, she's only entitled to 25% raise, and she's entitled to 50% based on what she did. So that's a personal thing, but I think that's something as managers you need to think about. I think better terms are equitable, and I think better terms are consistent, and I think better terms are flexible in understanding the people that you're dealing with, because you have the ability to give this person a bonus this month based on their performance, but maybe this person didn't do it. But to be fair, you know, should they both get the raise? Maybe or maybe not, because they didn't do equal work or they didn't both do what they should have done to get the raise. So I think that we have to be careful in the fair, but I think if we're consistent and we have policies and procedures, everybody should be able to get what they deserve and be equitable. All right, let me fly through the last little bits here. 5 minutes. Okay. Win-win. Ideally, when you have conflict and you work with people, you can come to something that's win-win for everybody involved, you know, managers and people. A couple of key things that I want to point out in here. Purpose, if there's conflict, keep the discussion relevant. Anybody in here ever have an argument with their boyfriend or girlfriend? Everybody should raise their hand, because I'm sure you had arguments. What happens when you have an argument with your roommate or with your boyfriend or your girlfriend? Say it louder.
You go off topic.
What do you mean by go off topic?
Like you started fighting because you were late to pick them up, and then it turns into 2 weeks ago you didn't get the right comb from the store. Then a month before that you left the light on, and et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is the key. Is that whenever you get into conflict or you're torqued out about something, you end up not being torqued out about whatever the reason is today. You dredge up everything from the past 6 months to the past year, and in the end you forget what the whole conflict or discussion was about. So if you are a manager and you are confronting people, you have to keep the discussion relevant. You have to stay on the topic, and you're only talking about, in this conflict resolution, this particular conflict, which means you can't wait until they've done 10 things wrong before you get to the conflict management, because now it's going to be this big, huge blow-up, and you're not going to be able to do it. So that's one of the hardest things for everybody in this room to do when you're working with people, is to keep the discussion relevant and focused to that particular topic. The other thing that's not on here is the personal element. Remember, a lot of times we take things personally, and it's not meant to be personal, or a lot of times we dredge up and bring in personal things to a conflict or a discussion, and it shouldn't be. We should be sticking to the fact that he didn't pick up his girlfriend on time. One specific element, and not everything else involved, or the fact that it was her fault because she wasn't ready or whatever, okay? So keep the abstract principles, stay away from the abstract principles. Everything is relevant. Make sure that you listen and be a good listener. Try not to be debating or derogatory. All right. Everything is going to come down to evaluation. The best way for you to make sure that things get consistent and things are fair for your employees is to have good tools for managing. And hopefully, if you work in an environment, you'll get to evaluate your manager and talk about their strengths and their weaknesses, but you have to remember, too, that those things have to be measurable. Okay? Is it easy to measure somebody's initiative? That one might not be too bad. Takes on new tasks, asks individuals in the company to be part of committees, volunteers for subcommittees and volunteers for things, so that one might be. It's relatively easy to show whether somebody's dependable or not, whether they show up to work on time, whether they're dressed appropriately, whether they have the right paperwork. So some things are measurable. Others are not as easy to measure. If they're competent, we hope we can measure that by outcomes and whether their patients get better or not, or whether people stay with the company. So people should get to be evaluated, but you also don't want to have an evaluation process that's big and cumbersome and heavy. But you want the ability for people to be evaluated so that they can get raises or they can get promoted. Okay? So some keys: should be done on a regular basis, should be a good process between the manager and the employee. It shouldn't be, oh my God, I'm going to get evaluated today and I'm fearing for my job. It should be a process that's good for both people. If it's not, then you might want to think about working somewhere else. Okay? The intent should not be to fire. The intent should be to make the company better and to reward employees for their good, positive performance. Okay? It's a monitoring process, and it should allow employees to set goals for yourself so that if you didn't do something so well this quarter or this year, you can do something better next time and either get promoted or have more patients or whatever the reward is. Okay? I'm guessing that a lot of places don't follow these particular guidelines. Sometimes people will have like a trial period where you get like the first 6 to 8 weeks or the first 3 months are kind of on a trial. We'll see how you do, and then we'll reevaluate you, and then maybe we'll give you a raise or a bonus based on how you do. If not, if there's no pre-evaluation thing, you should at least be done every year, have the opportunity to say, you know, how did I do this year? Did I do well? Did I do poor? What can I work on? What do I need to do to get more money? What do I need to do to get my own office? What do I need to do to get my own patient load? And that it may take more than one tool, and it should be meaningful. Okay? And here are some guidelines. We don't need to read them step by step, but here's some guidelines on how to do it so that you can develop something if you are not familiar. Your textbooks and the internet, I'm sure, have tons and tons of tools. Keep in mind that everybody has a weakness. Not everybody's a rock star, so there's got to be things built in to make them and help them be better. There you go. All right. Next week, I want to say we are, wait 1 second and I'll tell you.